So yeah, I had a lot of hospital admissions, 2, 3 times a month, gradually getting worse. But then suddenly my care in hospital started to change with the stoma care. Why aren't you doing this yourself? This should be easy for you to do. And it was getting to a stage where I was getting embarrassed asking for help and being told that you're going to have to wait until they weren't busy for it to be dealt with. Having leaks and being told just having to wait until someone is available to deal with it. Put some tape on the side to prevent it from coming out the side, things like that. And
It's
this
still
starts to,
though, isn't it? So it's still not good.
yeah. And again, I started asking questions of if someone else was wanting to the toilet, would you tell them to wait? And
Exactly.
nurses were saying that's a completely different situation. I'm saying it's not. It's exactly the same. And I found that tough. And thankfully, by this time, I had my first ever stoma nurse. 1994 was the first time I had any support from the hospital to do with the stoma. We had nobody, even as a child. My parents had no help from the hospital. There was no
Just
such thing
thinking
as
back a
school.
minute from that transition, because you were obviously in pediatric care for, well, forever until you were an adult.
Yeah,
What was that transition like between pediatric to adult care? Was it a very major difference?
no, nothing. I was literally referred from one surgeon to another. I was with the adult surgeon for 6 months. Then he retired because he was an old guy.
Yeah,
And then I got put on to just a general surgeon.
yeah,
And again, his knowledge of colorectal was limited,
yeah.
but he knew how to do the surgeries. He said he'd done them. Most of his bowel surgeries had been emergency surgeries, so he knew what to do.
Yeah, good.
And but again, like I said, I had no stoma support up until 1994. And as it happens, the stoma nurse that I saw, she was a student nurse that was looking after us when I had the rectum removed the previous year. And to this very day, she's still my stoma nurse.
Oh,
And we
that's
have a
amazing.
very, very close relationship.
Oh,
We
which is good. Like you can't put a price on that.
not she's there for everything, not just in stoma. She's the I could ring her up today and say, I've got a problem with this, what shall I do? And she would go and sort it,
Oh,
you know. And
yeah, you thought so, a nurse.
she literally took me under her wing when she was just setting out in her career,
Yeah,
and she's followed my journey as a patient, and I've followed her journey as a nurse.
that's amazing.
And that bond we have is just unbreakable. You know, she was on holiday last week, and she sent us an email asking how my CT scan went.
Oh, that's so
She's seeing us
sweet.
next week. And it's like, she was in Menorca last week, sent us an
Thinking
email
about you.
thinking about me. I think not many people would do that.
No, they wouldn't. She's a good one.
No,
Glad you
yeah.
managed to
And
keep her.
for years, I've worried that the day will come when she retires because we're the exact same age
Yeah.
and
Oh
we
wow.
have the exact same birthday.
Oh dear.
How
You didn't
strange
make
is
it
that?
up. Oh, that's
Uh,
cute.
how strange is that? And I always worry that she's going to retire before whatever happens to me.
I
And
think
she's
she'll hold
part
out,
time.
Graham. She's just going to stick around for you. I bet even if she
She's
did retire, you'd still be able to contact her and she'd still sort it out.
definitely. And
Oh,
she's gone part time because her husband's my surgeon now.
oh, really?
Yeah, he's a colorectal surgeon.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's
So
good.
it's like,
I bet they sit at
so
home
it's like
talking about
oh,
you.
probably, yeah,
Talking over tea, dinner, whatever, over the
yeah.
evening meal.
But
Let's talk about Graham today.
yeah, we are very, very close. And
What?
she's the only person that I trust. I don't trust
And
anybody
you
else
need
with
one. You always
my
need one.
care.
In
It's
healthcare, it's very difficult to have a trusting. I personally find that it's very difficult to have a trusting relationship in healthcare because we get dismissed and stuff so often. So to
yeah,
have that person and also her husband as the surgeon, that's good. That's a nice little
exactly.
support system, and it's good that you have
It
someone you
is.
trust so
Uh,
much. I
uh,
can't remember where we were with you. We were in
in the mid 90s, in
yeah
and
we
out
were
of
in
hospital,
'94 and you were
bleeding,
flaring again, I believe.
flaring up again. And that went on and off for about 5, 6 years, just in
When
and
you
out
have
of
to remember
hospital.
that there were a lot, like the treatments that are available now were not available then.
That's
So
right.
it was mainly tablets and steroids.
Yeah. And let's say this went on and off for 5 or 6 years while I was still working. And again, it was the constant worry that I was working. Things, I would get leaks at work, and I would say to the boss, I've got to go, I've got to take medication. I've left my medication at home. Can I go home? That was like a code that we used. As soon as I said that, then they knew it was like I've got some sort of issue that I had to deal with, and they didn't question it.
That's
You know, they
good.
believed in it, and it got to a stage where, again, with all this bleeding and this the stone from the stoma, and I was getting tired, and work was getting harder, the pressures were getting harder, and I asked if I could go part time, reduce my hours, and they agreed to that. But my health again started to get worse in and out of hospital. And then I decided I've had an idea. Why don't I just move to Spain, buy a house in Spain, and I'm a different person in the heat and the warm weather.
Yeah.
I'm not as stressed. I worked out the less stress I was in, the less bleeding I was getting. If that made sense.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's something I've got to look into.
Mm-hmm.
So it was 1999. I told the boss, I says, I'm going out to Spain for a few days to buy a house. Do you mind if I take some time off? And he just laughed at us. He says, really? I said, yeah, yeah, yeah. I says, I'll be back next week. I says, I'll show you the pictures of what I bought. He says, okay then. He says, hope it works out for you. So off I goes to Spain with my mum and dad. And I says, looked at various properties. I thought, right, I'll buy that one. So
You
bought an
literally managed
apartment.
to find a house that you wanted to buy in a couple of days in Spain.
Yeah, we're out there 4 days, and I must have looked at around 50 houses
Wow. Did you
in
book them
4 days.
before you went, or did you get there and then go to an estate agent and just be like, show me all the houses?
I booked the estate agent when I was in the UK. Those
So
met us at
she
the
knew she'd just
airport.
got a list of
I had a list, yeah.
things.
Those put us up in a hotel, and we're out from like 8 in the morning till 8 at night.
That's
It
crazy.
was crazy.
I bet you were tired.
It was exhausting. And so found the property I wanted, took photographs, and it was basically a mountain. Nothing there, just a mountain.
Oh, that's amazing.
Blank. And my boss says, you've really bought a mountain? I says, well, my house is going to get built on that. And he says, all right, right, right. He says, when? I says, I've been told 6 months. Right, right. Have you paid the money? I said, yeah, I've just given all the money. Give the biller the money. Let him get on with it. So he started to laugh. He says, I've got a bad feeling about this, you know.
I
And he
mean, you
started to
sound
think,
suspicious, Graham.
and I'm thinking to myself, what the hell have I done here? I've handed my life savings over to this builder to build us a property. But he said it'll be done in 6 months. But you can imagine the stress in that 6 months.
Yeah.
So 6 months passed and I heard nothing. So I says to the boss, I'm off to Spain for a week to see where my house is. So I goes across to Spain for a week with my mum, my dad, and goes to where my house should be. Still a mountain. Still this massive mountain. Hasn't even had a digger on it.
No.
So I goes to the builders. I says, where's my house? He says, oh, it's been delayed. We're starting next week. And true to his word, they did start a week later.
Look for that, because
And
I thought you'd been robbed.
it took them 18 months
Oh,
to do.
I feel relieved.
And,
There was a house in the end.
so I got the keys in January 2001. And I kept joking at work and I kept saying, as soon as I get the keys, give it a couple of months, I'm going to go on the sick and I'm going to get ill health retirement and I'm going to live happily ever after. And we joked about it for months. And then it was the July of that year, 2001. Started being well again, but it was different. I didn't know things were different. And everyone at work was saying, something's not right because you're very quiet. This isn't the real me. I kept saying to them, I don't feel well, but I don't know what it is. It's not normal, unwell. And finished work one day and I never went back. I was rushed into hospital that night where my leg started to become swollen and I could see it going up my leg and I was witnessing it. So my dad took us straight to the A&E. And as I was walking into A&E, I felt a snap behind my knee. And the doctor said, you've snapped a ligament. That's what it is. Go home, put your feet up for a couple of days, you'll be all right. The next morning, both legs were out like that. So I calls the GP and the GP comes out and she says, I'm calling for an ambulance. I was blue lighted into hospital. By the time I reached the hospital, my body had filled up with fluid up to there, to my chest. And I had gone from 38 kilos the day before to 101 kilos in weight. And they didn't know what was wrong. And everything was just swollen. My stoma, which was normally really, really small, was massive, absolutely huge. And they'd done loads of tests and they found out that I had a condition called nephrotic syndrome, where the kidneys were leaking protein and they just couldn't stop it. And I was in hospital 6 months for that. They had to slowly drain that fluid off, but it had to be done slowly.
I bet you were so frustrated to be in the hospital again.
I
Something
was
else.
really poor. Yeah. And it took them nearly a year to get all the fluid to go. And by this time, I had just finished 12 months being on the sick, and I was given, I think I was on half pay by that time. And we were in talks about going back to work on a phased return basis, 1 day a week for the next so many months. And it was all agreed, everything was in place. And then suddenly I had the biggest flare up ever in the Crohn's, just a week before going back to work. And I was rushed back into hospital. And that was in the July 2002. And the rest of the colon was just riddled with adhesions. It was all inflamed, the whole lot. They could hardly put the camera down. And this is what we need to do urgent surgery. And we need to take the rest of the colon out. And we need to take away the colostomy and give you an ileostomy. And as we're talking about that, is can you change the site of the stoma from the left to the right where it's more flat? Because I've got a dip on that left side with the scoliosis. And the surgeon said he would do his best. And I says, if it's on that side, then I might be able to manage it myself because it's an easier side for us. And he says, well, we'll do everything we can. So I had that surgery. And the first question I asked when I woke up, what side was the stoma on? And they said it was on the left-hand side.
Yay!
And my heart just, no, it was in the same place. It was kept it on the left. My heart just dropped.
Oh no, we thought we wanted it on the left. Oh,
And
no, she's very upset about this.
The poor nurses in recovery didn't know why I was so upset about it.
Yeah. They don't have the backstory.
But I was in ICU at the time and the stoma nurse came to tell us and she says, don't worry about it. She says, well, just manage it like we've always done.
Yeah.
We'll cope with it. She says, that's not an issue and it's never going to be an issue. And it was then, it was decided after lots of meetings at work that they would offer me a good ill health retirement package, which I took up. I took a lot of advice from the medical teams, and they said, yeah, it's probably in your best interest to take that package. And I was very, very fortunate of what they did give us because I wasn't expecting a lot because I hadn't worked that long. You know, it'd only been 10 years and you kind of build that much of a pension up.
Yeah.
In 10 years. But they give us so much yearly wages in advance, and on top of that, and then my ill health pension, and then they agreed they would pay out me normal pension if I'd retired at retirement age.
Yeah.
So it was an offer that I could not refuse. And then I was advised that I could apply for different benefits as well, because I needed care and I needed support. I couldn't manage everything.
How old were you then when you were medically retired?
I was 30. 30, just
in the prime of your life, really.
30. Yeah.
That's a shame. But you did it. You actually went to work in the first place, which everybody said you wouldn't do. And you worked for 10 years.
10 years, yeah. And like I say, the way that took my life, you know, something that I look back with pride.
Yeah, and so you should.
I did those silly things when we used to go out drinking. Wouldn't stop us from doing that. We used to get drunk. Christmas parties. One Christmas party, I got really, really drunk. And my best friend who I was talking about earlier, he was so worried about us when I got home at midnight. He actually rang my mum to see how I was. He was worried because I was just,
you were that drunk.
I was that bad. He'd never seen us that drunk ever before.
So you still managed to experience life, just like, you know, a normal, healthy person.
Exactly. I led life to the full when I worked in between.
You're still very much doing that now, actually. We'll get to that later.
So let's say then 2002, that retirement, and I took a lot of time out where I just needed time to myself. Backwards and forwards to Spain, it was doing us the world of good. It made a huge difference. And then I noticed I was having issues with swallowing and food, describing food being stuck just above my stomach areas as if it's not going down properly. So my gastro team says, "Oh, let's put the camera down just to see what's happening in that area." Still having the odd flare up with Crohn's that we knew about. So I had the camera down. That was in the mid-2000s. And he says, "You've got a condition that's called Barrett's esophagus." He said, "Nothing serious. We're just going to keep an eye on it." He says, "It's just where the lining of the bowel slightly comes up into the esophagus." But he says, "We'll put you on tablets to treat it. We'll monitor it every 2 years. And anything suspicious, we'll catch it early." Which I thought, fine, I'm happy with that. And done that regular for 12 years, not an issue. And then I started had issues with the bladder. Couldn't pass water properly, going into retention and getting lots of water infections. And they weren't quite sure why that was happening. And then they finally linked it with when I had the rectum closed. You can get damage with the bladder with that. And they believe that's where the issues was coming from.
Yeah.
And I went through a stage, I think I was admitted 4 times in 6 weeks with water infections, going into retention. And then it was agreed that I really should be self-catheterising every 2 to 3 hours. And
again, it was something. Did that progress for you? Did you have medication from when they, you know, said that this is the reason? That I mean, I've going back some years now. So obviously, last year last year, had the same issue, and it's the same thought process. There's a lot of space in there as well that the bladder might flop about into, and then I know from previous surgeries there's a lot of adhesions, so the bladder is a muscle and it's not contracting properly, and then you deal with these issues where you're either continually going or retaining it. So obviously I got put on medication straight away, and I will touch wood say that has helped me loads. But how was the medication available then? Did you start some medication and did it not help?
They did start us on tablets straight away, and it was helped to help the bladder relax its muscles, so it was easier for us to go. But the bladder still wasn't emptying fully, and they were doing regular scans on it. And they says, "Oh, your bladder's still quarter of a full, it should be empty."
Yeah.
And that's when you get the infections, and we need to empty that.
Yeah.
And we had a few conversations about self-catheterisation, and at first I was having none of it. There's no way. I says, I've got enough to cope with. I
Yeah.
can't cope with something new, something that I'm not going to do. And but eventually that was taken out of my hands, and I was sort of cornered into it in one of the hospital admissions. And basically it says, you're not leaving here until you self-catheterize. Basically, that was it.
I mean, you obviously
Don't
are,
go
when you're continually having like urine infections and stuff, that's obviously comes with the possibility that you're then going to get kidney infections. And so,
Yeah,
you know, safety wise, it was definitely the best idea, but I can totally understand where your head was in that, you know, I've been through enough and I'm doing enough. And you,
yeah,
like you say, even with your diabetes and stuff, you've done everything by the book. So it's just one more thing put on your plate that has to be done. A bit
yeah.
overwhelming, really.
And that, that's it. But having all these infections, it's why can't you treat the infections? And the kept saying, well, we can't just put you on antibiotics all the time. So then they decided what they would do. They would start us on self-catheterization, start off as twice a day, morning and night. But they would also refer us to the infection team and let them take over that because they were more knowledgeable on it, of what medication would be best to treat
Yeah.
it. And it wasn't long after I started the catheterization that I was actually admitted to the infection team with a really bad infection. I was in hospital 3 weeks and they gave us IV antibiotics, and I had to have a PICC line in and all sorts, and I was really unwell. And then I realised how serious this could get if
Yeah.
I didn't start catheterizing on a regular basis. And that was in the mid-2000s that I started to do that. And it took me a good 12 months to accept doing it.
Yeah.
Something that I didn't like, but it was something that I knew that I had to do. I couldn't let anybody else do it for us. In the early days, I did have the district nurses
Yeah.
sort of monitoring that I was doing it right. And then it was agreed that I should have bladder Botox.
Mhm.
That would help to prevent further infections, to prevent bladder leaks that I was getting as
Yeah.
well all the time. And I now have that done every 3 months. And I go into hospital on a Thursday, have it done on a Friday, get home on a Sunday.
Got your
And that
routine
happens every
now.
3 months. It's a routine, but it's a routine that I do hate because there's every time I go in, there's issues with the stomach care again and again. They never learn from the previous admissions.
And that's really,
You
really
know,
disappointing.
even though I'm on the same ward, same staff, it's the same attitude,
Crazy.
and it's like we'll do it when we're ready, not when you're ready, even though
That's
it's
horrible. I mean, I've experienced that for brief, I say brief, like the one stay was 6 weeks and it was very much like that. And I've had conversations with people that, yeah, I know the NHS is stressed, and I'm really not arguing the point that the NHS is stretched, but those nurses weren't busy. They were at the nurses' station having a laugh and a conversation and eating a curry or whatever. In the
yeah,
meantime, I'm laid in my own shit. And sometimes that could have been prevented if they'd have actually come early enough. Do you know what I mean? So I can forgive the NHS for many things because it's a very stretched system. I understand that, but that does not mean that the attitudes of the nurses that I have been in contact with personally throughout my journey, they were not good nurses in my view. When they have literally chosen to go and chat to their other nurse friends instead of caring for a patient, that's got nothing to do with the NHS being stretched and people being busy now, has it? So to hear that that happens to you every 3 months, because 3 months it's actually a very short amount of time. You're in there four times
it
a
is.
year for days having to deal with not being cared for properly. That's awful. That's not good enough. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a rant, Graham. I'm really angry on your behalf.
That's all right. I was only in a few weeks ago, and I've got my appointment for my next admission at the
Yeah.
end of September, and I'm worrying about it now. But one quick story about the way they go on about the stoma care. There was one occasion the bag had lifted on one side, and it was starting to leak. So I asked the nurse. She says, "Oh, I'm busy. I'm busy. Can I change it yet? I'm going to take it down." So she went into my locker, and you know the rings you put on first
The seals, yeah.
to stop the leaks. She took a ring out. She sort of pulled it in half and stuck it on the side of the bag to use it as like a. And I'm sort of lying there thinking, have I just really witnessed that?
I'm sure
And I
she
was like,
thought it was a genius idea. Oh, what an idiot.
I was lost for words. And I actually took a photograph and sent an email to my stomach nurse at the other hospital, and she was absolutely gobsmacked.
Wow.
She just could not believe a nurse would actually do such a thing. So
I'm sorry for laughing, but it's just laughable. That's just stupid. That's absolutely ridiculous.
It is. I was just lost for words.
Oh,
I couldn't
God.
believe, and
Yeah.
that stayed on all night.
Wow. Yeah, that was an unrealistic expectation.
And the next morning, I played hell. I literally, I snapped the next morning.
I'm not
I
surprised.
got the matron, involved.
Good. Good on
I
you.
wasn't happy. I wasn't going to accept that.
Good.
And now and again, I still have to contact the matron and say, look, I've got problems still on the ward.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very, very hopeful that, the next time will be better.
I hope so.
That's hope, and that's not expecting.
Yeah. So yeah, managed to get my head around doing the catheters now and doing it all. And then it was 2019. Had to go for my regular camera down, and consultant wrote to us and says something's not quite right with the cells in your esophagus. He says, I'm going to ask for a second opinion, and you'll have the camera down again in January, which I did 2020. And so another consultant, and the sedation as usual. And then I got told, took some biopsies, some suspicious cells, but they weren't that concerned. But they would pass the results on to someone even higher. So, okay, started to get a little bit concerned. Then COVID started in the February. Then I get a phone call in the May saying that the surgeon had looked at the previous biopsies. He would like to do another biopsy just to see if there's been any change in that short space of time. And would I go up the following week, even though the whole place was on lockdown, everything was shut off. He had permission for me to go in.
It was a very, very eerie time to go to the hospital during COVID. You went in and it was silent. There were no people. A psychological tumbleweed passes by.
And I was reassured that there would be no other patients around. Obviously, I was COVID tested negative. He said the staff would be all tested, they would be negative. So he says you'll be in a safe bubble, so to speak. He says we can do the test safely. So it goes in and gets all prepared and gets taken into the room. And the surgeon walks in, and this is the first time I've met the guy. Never seen him before. And he was really nice, really, really lovely guy. And he explained what he had saw in the previous tests and results, and that he was slightly concerned that these cells had changed in such a short space of time. And then he says, I'd been cannulated already, gowned, ready to go, sitting on the bed, just waiting to lie down. And he says, this isn't the easiest thing to tell you, but I cannot go through with the test today. And my heart just sank. I was prepared mentally. He says, if anything goes wrong and he perforates the esophagus, he says, I don't want to take you into surgery, and I don't want you to end up in intensive care. He says, that's not the place to be at this stage. He says, it's just the risks, although this actually happening, but the risks of something going wrong in ICU are extremely high.
Yeah. I mean, the risk exists, so it's not one worth taking at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I was absolutely devastated. And I did say to him, is it cancer? Is it cancer? He says, that's what I'm looking for. He says, I cannot say yes, I cannot say no. He says, the cells are very suspicious, and we have to look at that. We cannot ignore that. He says, the sooner he can look at it, the sooner we can get a plan. He says, I'm going to attempt to have it done again in 3 weeks, but I'm going to send you to another hospital where it'll be safer, where it's a COVID-free hospital. And if anything goes wrong, you're going to be in a safe area, which he kept that promise. And 3 weeks later, I had it done at my other hospital, and that was in the June. And then you get a phone call in July, 2 weeks later, saying, "Will you come up for a little chat? We need to have a little chat with you." And I'm thinking, I know what's coming here. You know, if it was just inflammation, they would have said.
You'd
But
expect to be told over the phone, wouldn't you?
yeah, I says, my mum, dad, I says, I know what's coming. We've got to prepare that it's going to be cancer. And a couple of days later, we went up for this meeting, and as expected, he did break the news that after a lot of meetings with other surgeons to double check, because it was very close, he says the conclusion out of all the surgeons in this meeting says, yes, those cells are cancerous and we need to treat it. But it's something that we don't need to rush into. He says it's a slow progressing cancer. And he says, with it being slow progressing, we can get on top of it and we can beat it, and we can beat it as a team. But we've got to work together. And I says, look, I'm up for the fight. He says the plan was to have surgery in the August, followed by radiotherapy in a couple of months afterwards. And then he says, hopefully by the new year, I'll be cancer free.